Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So continuing where we last left off in the Mutn of Shujaa. So last thing we talked about was the sifat salah in general. So we talked about what is the arkan in the last class. We took the arkan and also the hayat, and we talked about these things. And of course, the arkan are the things that you have to have it in the salah. Without it, the salah is incomplete. And all of these have to be done. And then we talked about the hayat, which are the things that are the beautifiers of the salah, such as like the mustahabat. And so the next thing he's going to talk about is still on the same, we're still talking about salah, but he's going to talk about the difference between a man and a woman in regards to salah. And so there are some differences here. And in general, the general principle is that a man is like a woman in everything unless there's evidence that comes. And so this is the general principle, but if there's something that comes that that shows that there's evidence between this, then this is where there will be a difference in some minor issues here. And it's about 5 differences here. So he says here first, وَالْمَرْأَةُ تُخَالِفُ الرَّجُلَ فِي خَمْسَةِ أَشْيَاء. So that the woman, she goes and تُخَالِفُ, she's different than the man in 5 things. فَالرَّجُلُ يُجَافِي مِرْفَقَيْهِ عَنْ جَنْبَيْهِ ويقل بطنه عن فخذيه في الركوع والسجود. والسجود. Yeah. And so this is the first difference here, is that the man in general, he says yujafi mirfaqayhi and jambayhi. So like the mirfaqay, of course, like this is the elbows. He pulls the elbows away from his body. So in general, this is the thing that a man will normally have his elbows away from his body when he's doing things. And so when he's going into ruku' and also in sujood as well. And in sujood, it's sunnah for someone to be able to see the armpits themselves. Like this is the way the Prophet ﷺ was seen when he was in sujood, and it's mentioned that they could see the white of his armpits while he was in sujood, which shows that his arms were out. And so like the arms shouldn't be like next to the body in that. And this is an jambayhi. And so the first part he says yujafi mirfaqayhi an jambayhi. And this, of course, this is in regards to sujood, but also somewhat in regards to like ruku'. But in ruku' it's not something that should be out like this. It just means that they're not tucked into your sides. Some people, they will stick their arms out like this, and I'm the only thing that I know that they could be thinking about is that the tajafi, or having the arms out, is something because there was originally the ruku' was something that people would have their hands put together in ruku', and they weren't holding their knees, but rather their hands were like this. So when we have tajafi, it means this is the naskh or the nasikh, for the hands go on the rukbatay, on the knees. So this is the thing when it means that now the hands are far apart. This is the nasikh, which means that the hands are on the knees, but not that the elbows are sticking your neighbors. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And then also he says here, وَيُكِلُّ بَطْنَهُ عَنْ فَخِذَيْهِ, which means that he shouldn't have his belly shouldn't be resting on his thighs. And this is in ruku', of course. In ruku', he shouldn't have his belly on his thighs, and also in sujood. Of course, when someone is making sujood, they should, as I mentioned before, that their backside needs to be up higher than their shoulders and their head. So their backside needs to be up. And if it's not up, then you wouldn't call it sujood. So this is one thing, that in the belly should be off of the thighs. And so this is something he says here for the man. He doesn't necessarily say this exactly for the woman in regards to the belly. So this is something he doesn't say that. He's going to talk about what the woman does, but he says this for the man, but he doesn't necessarily say that for the woman, or that she does the opposite. And then he also says here that this is he says وَيَجْهَرُ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْجَهْرِ وَإِذَا نَابَهُ شَيْءٌ فِي الصَّلَاةِ سَبَّحَ. And so he says وَيَجْهَرُ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْجَهْرِ. So of course we have the times that we would recite out loud, and this is what he means by here, that the man would recite out loud. And so he's going to talk about the woman. Does she recite out loud? And he says she lowers her voice in the presence of non-mahram. He says تَخْفَضُ صَوْتَهَا بِحَضْرَةِ الرِّجَالِ الْأَجَانِبِ. So like in regards to if there's non-mahram men around her, then she lowers her voice around them. Of course, if she's by her family and whatnot, there's no one that's going to be like thrown into any fitna, then this is fine. But in general, the reason for that is because like a woman's voice, if she has like a very beautiful voice or something and she's reciting, maybe it's a cause for fitna for men. So this is something for her to lower her voice in that thing. But of course, the man, he would always raise his voice, and it's not a source of fitna. So he also says here, وَإِذَا نَابَهُ شَيْءٌ فِي الصَّلَاةِ سَبَّحَ. And what he means by nabahu shay'un is like if something happened in the salah, like if there was a mistake or something, then he would say subhanallah, and that's what tasbih is saying, like subhanallah. And so he says this. And of course, the woman, she would clap, and we'll talk about this, how that happens. And he says, وَأَوْرَةُ الرَّجْلِ مَا بَيْنَ سُرَّتِهِ وَرُكْبَتِهِ. And so then he talks about the awrah. And this is the difference between the man and the woman. And he says that the awratul rajuli is whatever is between the surah, which is the belly button, wa rukbatihi, which is his knees. So what is between that? That's the awrah for a man. So if a man, like say he was very poor, as like some of the Sahabi were this way, they basically only had one cloth that they would wear, and this was all that they could do. And so you just make sure that it was covering from the belly button to the knees. And of course, if someone's in ihram, then make sure that they are covering from their belly button to their knees. And this is also a mistake that sometimes people will make. They will be running around the Kaaba, and they put it around their waist, but not around from their belly. And so their awrah is showing while they're running around the Kaaba doing tawaf. So this is the awrah for the man. It needs to be between his belly button, also going a little above it, just to make sure that you have everything. Of course, like this is always the safer thing to do, and also for to the knees. And of course, we talk about the woman afterwards. And so he says here, وَالْمَرْأَةُ تَضُمُّ بَعْضَهَا إِلَى بَعْضٍ. And this is in general. He says that the woman, she tadummu, which means like she closes in, like she tucks herself into, like she tucks her body parts in by themselves, so that there's nothing that's sticking out, out in the open. In general, there's not like a hadith that like clearly says the woman is to do this, but in general, the woman is like ma'mura, like that she is commanded with things to be like with satr, which is like to be like not out in the open with herself. And so this is something that the Shafi'i, they looked at this and they said this general thing for women to always be in a way that is the most like that is not out in the open, but rather it's something that is smaller, is better for her, so that she's not like sticking her body parts out in the open. And so this is closer for her and with her hayat. So like the hayat of a woman, and it would mean that she would be of this sort where she tucks herself in instead of being out in the open. And of course, this is ijtihad from them, and there's nothing that's completely clear about this in like Quran or Sunnah, but rather this is the ijtihad of looking at the general concept of a woman is supposed to cover herself. And so of that covering is like to not like stick herself out with all of the body parts in the same way. And he says here in the next thing, which is تَخْفَضُ صَوْتَهَا بِحَضْرَةِ الرِّجَالِ الْأَجَانِبِ. And also, as I mentioned, that she wouldn't raise her voice in the parts where normally we would raise her voice if there are ajanib. Ajanib is someone that she's allowed to marry. And so like if she's in a place where there's other people that are going to fall into fitna, of course she wouldn't raise her voice of that. And the Shafi'i madhab is that the woman's voice is not awrah. Like she's allowed to talk with men and whatnot, but of course she should never have a softness to her voice that is like a cause of fitna, and she should be careful with that and speak to men in a normal standard way, without throwing them into fitna or anything of that sort. And then it's okay for a woman to speak to a man, and in that as long as there's like no fitna and whatnot. And so and also for her recitation, like for a woman to recite, there's no problem with a man like hearing the recitation, especially if it's like a teacher. If it's like a teacher, like a man is fixing her, like maybe behind like a curtain or something, he listens and then he corrects her in her recitation. There's no problem with that, of course. And this is always without any fitna. And so, but of course, like a woman in front of men, like reciting for a whole group of men, this is something to think about. It's probably best not to do that. And so also he says here, وَإِذَا نَابَهَا شَيْءٌ فِي الصَّلَاةِ صَفَّقَتْ. And so like if there's anything that goes wrong in the salah, and she wants to let the person know that something happened, then she does tasfiq. And tasfiq is clapping. But of course, this clapping is not clapping this way. And actually, the Shafi'is, they talk about if she claps like this, then this is playing, and that playing breaks her salah. If she knew, of course. If she doesn't know and she misinterpreted, okay, that's something she's jahila. But if she's just clapping like this, no. The clapping should be on the back of the left hand with the palm of the right hand. And of course, it makes a lot more sense. And this is the hadith the Prophet ﷺ, he said that إِنَّمَا تَصْفِيقُ لِلنِّسَاءِ أو كما قال. And so they said that the tasfiq, or like clapping, is for nisa when he was in reference to talking about what to do in the salah. Because some of the Sahaba did this when there was something that happened in the salah, and so then he said this is for the women to do. And of course, like tasfiq in general is not something that's prohibited for men to do all across the board. This is specific to for the salah. This hadith is taken for the salah specifically. That's the place. And in nama, it has this like idea. It's of the forms of qasr, which is like breaking down that tasfiq is for this area. And so yes, you could understand from it that this is the only place for it. But when you look at the context, it's that this is referring to salah and not in general. So if you have like someone who wants to applaud for somebody, we're not going to say innama tasfiq lin-nisa, and like if someone's allowed to applaud, there's no problem with that, inshallah. Some people did take this hadith and went all the way out and took it to every single scenario where a man never claps. But this, like the madhab would be like this hadith is for the salah. It's referring to that. And so she would clap with the palm of her right hand on the back of her left hand. And that makes a clapping sound. And of the wisdom of that is that nobody knows who is the one that's doing it. And they don't hear her voice. And so if there's a man, that would be causing to think about who's saying that, like who's praying behind me. Of course, if he just hears a clap, there's no, that gets rid of any fitna. He's not going to hear a voice. He's not going to know who's that and who is she and anything. It's just going to be, oh, okay, something happened. As opposed, and there's no fitna with the man saying subhanallah, of course. And he says here, وَجَمِيعُ بَدْنِ الْحُرَّةِ عَوْرَةٌ إِلَّا وَجْهَهَا وَكَفَّيْهَا. And so he says here, the next thing is that all of the woman of a hurra, which is a free woman, and someone who's not a slave, is awra. And this is all, and this chapter is talking about salah. So of course we should make sure that we understand this is the awra when it comes to salah. When she's praying, if she's by herself, all of her body is awra except for, he says, illa wajhaha wa kaffayha. And so except for her hands, the wajhaha, and this is the same wedge that someone washes. So the same face that she washes for wudu is the same face that she needs to cover, or that she's allowed to show. But anything other than that, such as like under the chin and whatnot, should be covered. And also covering a little bit extra on the sides to make sure that she covered everything is also good. Just like we say with to do a little bit extra to make sure that there's nothing more and that we missed is also great. And also the hands as well. And so if somebody does have like loose, like someone, they raise their hands, their garment comes down a little bit. This is minor, and if there's something like that. But in general, if there is anything that's shown, it should be always covered up right away from anything else than that. And so also he says here, well, amatu karrajuli. And so a slave woman is like a man when it comes to the awra. And this is the view of a lot of the Shafi'i madhab, is that they basically say that when it comes to a slave girl, then she's allowed to pray like a man, the same awra. And of course, in general, like a slave woman is not treated the same way when it comes to the awra as a free woman. Like a free woman is someone that, like, she should be covered up in the most fashion. But when it comes to a slave woman, their awra is treated differently. Like there's a lot more like leeway that's given to a slave woman, and of course there's not as much fitna when it comes to a slave woman as it is for like a free woman. As a free woman has like a status in society, and like a slave woman doesn't have that same like status and whatnot. So there is a difference in there, and some of the scholars, even the Shafi'i scholars, like these days, they'll say no, she's the same as the hurra. She should cover everything that the hurra needs to do, and this is probably, of course, the safer of opinions, and Allah knows best. So this is in regards to the differences between the man and the woman when it comes to salah, and the next thing he's going to go into is the things that break salah, if once someone is in mubtilat. And so he says here, faslun. وَالَّذِي يُبْطِلُ الصَّلَاةَ أَحَدَ عَشْرَ شَيْئًا. And before we go into, is there any questions about this, the last chapter we went into? Any questions?
So the slave woman in the time of the Prophet, right? Well, they say they can pray like women. I mean, like men, but were they not covering all the time?
The slave woman was generally more relaxed when it comes to covering in the time of the Prophet, or like and in general, like, and when it comes to like her hair and also like her face, of course, like her face was something that like she wasn't like someone who would necessarily cover her face. And of course, you know who she is, and like this is something the slave women in general weren't as like covered in that way. I'm not exactly for sure. There is a difference. I'm not exactly for sure all the details of the difference, whether it's like some of like the arms and whatnot, or if it's like the face and some of the hair, or if it's the hair or not. But there is like differences of opinion when it comes to the free woman. She's given like the full, like she needs to be covered completely. But when it comes to a slave woman, there's a lot more give. There's a lot more leeway. As far as like I haven't looked into, like I haven't seen any hadiths that are like super clear about like the slave woman, especially not the praying as a man. Like I don't know of any hadith, and he doesn't bring that here, in like the evidence is here. Okay, and so then going into the things that break salah, and of course as I mentioned before, all of the shurut, if any of the shurut go away while someone is in the salah, any condition goes away while someone's in salah, it breaks the salah. In general, this is a general principle, and also another thing is any of the arkan, if it's left purposefully, it would like break the salah as well. Like if somebody leaves the arkan or something purposefully, like they want to go into sujood and they're just going to skip the ruku', that would break the salah as well. Like the arkan have to be there, and so no one can like change that as much. And so he's going to give a couple things here, and some of them will be of the shurut, as I mentioned. He says al-kalamul amd, and so this is speaking, and this is the speaking that is intentional speaking. So if somebody forgot and they said something, they see something and they forgot they're in salah, like this can happen, and they say no, and they realize, oh, I'm in salah. Like if they didn't mean to, if they like forgot, then this is okay, and they didn't realize that they were in salah. Okay, you're still in salah. You just keep going and you make sujood sahw. But if somebody intentionally said something, even if it was a word that's a single letter, such as qi, like qi is from like waqiya, yaqi, and so if you said fi'l amr from this would be qi, which is a single letter in Arabic. This would break the salah if they said it intentionally. So if they said qi, all right, you broke the salah. And there's other like letters ra. If someone said ra, like that would break it if they meant, like this is something that happened. And of course they should never be speaking. And like speaking is also like if someone was excessively clearing their throat, and then this also like they would say this is like speaking, like purposefully. It wasn't like that they were overcome with something, but rather they wanted to get that nice beautiful voice while they're reciting, and they just go and just a bunch of extra. And then pretty much they'd almost say, did you say a couple of letters? Were there a couple of letters that are coming out while you're doing this? Like whether it's like a kha or something of that sort. Allah musta'an. But of course, if someone's overtaken by something and they didn't mean it, that's another thing. And also another principle is anything that breaks fasting also breaks the salah. Anything that breaks fasting also breaks salah. So eating, drinking. I don't think he's going to mention that, but this also breaks salah. He says here, وَالْعَمَلُ. He says, وَالْعَمَلُ كَثِيرٌ. And so the next thing is like in doing a lot of actions. And a lot of actions is 3 actions that are put together and one time. 3 actions that are like large actions. 3 actions that are all together and that aren't separated by any period of time. 3 actions that are mutataliya, like that they're all together. And so if you have 3 of these, then this would break. Sometimes people, when they walk, like say someone moves into salah, and you have someone who's leading that was standing next to him, and you can bring him back, this person will just start walking. He's got like 4 or 5 steps. Like in the Shafi'i madhab, the 4 or 5 steps it breaks. Like if you do 1, 2, you pause, then you do 1, 2, no problem. But if you do 3 together, this is we got a problem. So, of course, like, this is the area of ijtihad. Don't like throw everyone under the bus with this. But this is the area of ijtihad that basically it should never be more than three, and the three shouldn't be. And like these are like big movements. So like if you're doing like that, okay, that broke your salat. Like 1, 2, 3, like, and it's all together. And also, if someone is doing just small things, just like scratching, this is not a movement. This is, even if you're constant, this doesn't break your salah. Of course, it's better for you to leave it, but it doesn't break your salah because it's a small movement. And it needs to be something that's a major movement that is unseen. And if someone jumps, this is a huge major movement, and that breaks your salah. So this is what he says here is a lot of actions, and this is what breaks your salah. And this is 3 actions put together. If you broke it 2 actions, you broke it up, then another 2 actions, such as 2 steps. Another 2 steps, okay. Sometimes maybe big steps and whatnot, just to stay away from that. But occasionally there's a need to like move in salah, whether you're in a place that's not good and people need to go past and whatnot. So like, of course there's that, but to just do it, make sure you only do 1, 2, and you stop. 1, 2, stop. So that you're not just walking. And of course this is an area of difference of opinion that's very strong, so it's not something that if you see like your imam doing it, it's not something you say, oh, you broke the salah, and allow So also he says here, well, hadith, of course this is of the conditions, so if it ever leaves, if someone breaks the salah with their wudu breaks, then this breaks the salah. And of course this is in them being sure that the wudu broke. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked about someone who like this person like thinks that something happened in his salah, like that he broke his wudu in his salah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, don't leave until you hear something or you smell something, like, which he means like until you're certain, like absolutely certain, because sometimes people will feel things. They'll feel something happen. If you're unsure, then you're still in salah. You need to be proven without a doubt that you broke. If you're wondering, you're still in salah. And this is the general principle when it comes to like al-shak la yazalu al-yaqeen la yazalu bi-shak. So we have like yaqeen that I made wudu, and then I think I broke it. You think you broke it, or are you sure? So this yaqeen that you made wudu doesn't go away until you have something certain. And of course, once you're in salah, this is even more important. Don't like break your salah if you're wondering. You just keep going with that. And you need to be sure that that hadith happened. And also he says here, وَحُدُوث النَّجَاسَةِ. And there's also like if you got like najas on your clothes or something. And so this is something that is mentioned in general. This is of the conditions for you to go into salah. So this is something that would need to be there throughout the salah. And of course there's a long discussion about this, as like there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he was praying by the Kaaba, and then one of the kuffar, they brought up and threw a carcass onto him while he was in sujood. And then Fatima radiallahu anha, she took off the carcass from his back. And this is something that's najis. So of course there was kuffar that like slaughtered it and whatnot. This is something that's najis. There's no real good explanation from the Shafi'is in response to this hadith. So, Allahu a'lam. But this is, in general, the Shafi'i opinion is that if any najis happens, then this person, like if it remains on him, then it will be something that will destroy, that will render his salat invalid. And so also he says, one kishaful awra, and this is if part of the awra shows. And as I mentioned before, this awra that shows, it's something that would show and stay. And it was something that either is one, the person was negligent. If this person was negligent and it showed because of his negligence, and then this is something that would break the salah. If it was shown because of something that came out of nowhere, say your kid just, like a kid jumps up to his mom and grabs her rope. Okay, something showing out. So if she pulls it up right away, and she covers herself right after that, no problem. But if it's due to her taksir, like that she's like careless with the way that she's with like the way that she's like undressing herself, or like with a person, he's wearing short pants, or he's wearing pants that he knows aren't going to cover properly with a shirt that is short. and he knows when he's going into ruku', he knows that this happens. Like this is his taqsir, so he's not given the same leeway as someone who did everything that they could, and then something happened, or like the wind blew. This is different. And the person who has a valid excuse, he just covers up right away and he keeps going. The person who is negligent, this breaks their salah. And this is Shafi'i view here. And so then also he says, وَتَغْيِيرُ النِّيَّةِ. And also this means, like, if you change, like the niyyah is something that should be alongside of the salah the whole time from the beginning to the end. Even if you kind of forget in the middle, you'd say like istishaban. Like you take that you were still in that niyyah and nothing came and changed it. So you're there until the end. But if you ever, in the middle of your salah, you choose that you're not going to pray, or you say that if somebody walks in the door, then I'm going to break my salah. Or if somebody knocks on the door, I'm going to break my salah. Like you need, the niyyah has to be jazm, like a jazima. Like it has to be something that is firm and it's not shaking. So you can't like put your niyyah and attach it to something else that's a possibility. So your niyyah needs to be firm. So if you ever change that niyyah in the salah, it breaks it. Of course, you can have like if you're, say you're in a sunnah, or like say you're in a obligatory salah, and then you see that other people are coming together and they're doing a jama'ah in front of you, and you want to change this to a sunnah. You can change it to a sunnah, because this is changing from something that's bigger to less. There's no problem with changing it, and you finish it off as a sunnah, and then you want to get your the fard with the people. Okay, there's no problem with changing a fard to a sunnah. But going the other way, no, that doesn't work. If you started with the sunnah, you can't change it into a fard afterwards. It has to be, you have to have that niyyah there at the same time. And if anyone like if someone comes up and say the same thing, someone's praying, they came into the masjid and they're about to pray their 2 rakahs, so they start their 2 rakahs, then the person gives the iqamah right after they started. Of course, this happens all the time. Sometimes you can either pray quickly and catch up with them, or you can just break it off from the very beginning. But if you're going to break it off, as soon as you have the niyyah to break it off, this is of the mubtilat, so that your niyyah to not pray broke your prayer right away. So saying assalamu alaikum rahmatullah, as some people will do, this doesn't do anything, because you already broke the salah with your niyyah at the very beginning. So this is not, it's not connected to the salah. Your salah already ended. And so, like, of course, like the Shafis don't say that this is something that's sunnah to do. But as soon as someone intends to break the salah, it broke. Or if they no longer choose to pray, then they're no longer praying. Or if they attach their niyyah to something else that is outside of that, then that breaks the salah as well. Because the niyyah always needs to be firm and solid.
What if you're like between should I or should I not?
No, that's no problem. Yeah. If you're should I not, no, you didn't change it yet. Once you make that decision to change it, but if you attached your niyyah to something, like you're like, if someone knocks on the door now, then I'm going to stop. And you're firm about this. This isn't something that you're thinking about. No, but it's something that you're like, if this were to happen, that's when it would break. But if it's just you're iffy, there's no problem in that, inshallah. Because you're still going off of what you last had, which was firm. Starting the salah, you were firm, and until proven otherwise, you're still firm. Yeah.
So on that, does it apply on fard salah as well? So let's say I'm gonna pray, but if someone knock on the door, I'm gonna open the door because it's urgent, right? But it's not sunnah, it's fard prayer. Can you do that?
No, if you say that you're going to open the door, meaning that you're going to take 2 steps while you're still facing the qibla, you're not breaking the salat, then it's okay. And this is something the Prophet ﷺ, he opened the door before when Aisha while he was praying, and while Aisha radiallahu anha knocked on the door. And he opened the door for her while he was in salah. So you can open up the door and you could do your 2 steps, or pray next to the door if there's a problem. But to have that connection, if somebody comes out to break the salah, and no. Yeah. And if there's something urgent, that's something to take into consideration. But the niyyah always needs to be solid, and it can never be attached. Can't be attached. If this happens, then this. This is for salah, and especially with fard. Allah Ta'ala A'lam. But this is definitely the view of the Shafi'i madhab when it comes to niyyah. And so the next of them that he says was tidbarul qibla, and this is of the conditions for salah. So of course, like you need to face the qibla, and so if you're ever turned away from the qibla, then this is something that would break your salah. And of course, the qibla for the person who's that can see the Kaaba, he's got to be facing it. He can never be facing this, like this is the Kaaba and he's facing away from it. No, that breaks his salah, even if it's like this. If he's outside and he's kind of somewhere in the general direction, okay, that's different. But he can never be facing away from the qibla. This would break his salah, except for the person who's traveling or praying, like traveling, praying sunnah on his riding beast and whatnot. And so also, wal aklu wa shurb, as I mentioned, anything that breaks siyam also breaks the salah. And of the things that break siyam when it comes to akl and shurb that they'll talk about is if somebody like swallows their phlegm. So if they bring up like phlegm to their mouth and then it's in their mouth and then they swallow it. This is something that in siyam they would say this broke your siyam. So at the same time, they would say this also break your, the same thing that broke your siyam was the same thing that will break your salah. And also the same thing if somebody was eating, this sometimes happens, especially in Ramadan, is they'll eat like how many dates right before the iqamah. So right after then, they'll stuff their mouth full of dates, and then he gives the iqamah and they're still just like chugging, they drink some water and whatnot. And then the first rak'ah or the second rak'ah, they're still chewing the end of the dates. There's still like dates between their teeth that they're swallowing. This is eating. This eating would break your siyam. So this eating that broke your siyam, if you were to do it in the morning, is the same eating that's going to break your salah. So even though it's still in your mouth, you didn't bring anything new into your mouth, but you swallowing something that is the actual thing, this is what's breaking it. If you have just like a taste that's mixed, you can't make the difference between like the actual particles in the taste. Okay, this is something. You just got a sweet saliva. That's something. But if you actually have chunks, you need to spit them out. Spit them out and keep going. Same thing with candy and whatnot. If you have candy, you need to spit that out. Or if you have gum, you need to spit that out. Because anything that's giving an actual thing, putting it down, that would break your siyam, is also going to break your salah. And so this is something to keep in mind, and this is like the view in the Shafi'i madhab when it comes to eating. So if someone was to swallow their phlegm, then this would also be a break. So if someone does have a problem, of course, like they can have and this is also this is amdan. So this is that they do it intentionally while they're aware. If they do it and they're just an accident, then no. So say someone by accident, oops, I swallowed something. They didn't mean it, okay, keep going. Just like the speaking, it needs to be intentionally. So the same thing with eating, it needs to be intentional as well. And with them realizing what they're doing. So, and then also shurb, same thing here. And also qahqaha. And qahqaha is laughing out loud, lol. And so like if it's just laughing, if it's laughing like they're just smiling. This doesn't do it. This is not going to break it. But if you actually make noise, ha ha, all right, you broke your salat. Ha is a letter, and ha is another letter with med. This is 4 letters. You're out. If you did that, it's intentionally. Of course, you know that you're not supposed to do it, and you do it. So of course, like smiling. Of course, you should. This goes against like the respect that someone should have when they're in salah. But this doesn't break the salah. Like the smiling itself, or like even like a small like this wouldn't break it. But if you're actually making noise and you're laughing out loud, okay, khalas. And this doesn't break wudu. This just breaks the salah. It doesn't mean you need to go make wudu now and come back. But this is just the salah itself. And also ridda, wa'udhu billah. And of course, like the salah is no good for a non-Muslim. So if someone like committed kufr while they're in salah, of course their salah broke. And so, and of course, this only like the ibadah is not accepted except from Muslims. And so this is in general. This is the general concept of the things that break the salah. Of the things that sometimes there's a couple other things I'll mention here. One is if someone's following the imam, then he can't go behind them with 2 rak'ahs. So if he's or like 2 rukn. He can't go behind the imam and fall behind him by 2 rukn, like of the arkan, except with a valid excuse. So like he always needs to be following up the imam with what he's doing. But if he's slow or whatever, he's just taking his time and his imam's already done 2 sajda, and he's still coming down from ruku', okay, this is like two rukun, and there's no excuse for him, then this would break it. If there's an excuse, like a valid excuse, maybe he hasn't finished the Fatiha yet, and the Imam is very quick, and he's going dum, 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 and he hasn't finished the Fatiha yet, okay, then he's got an excuse. And he tries to just keep up as much as he can and make sure that he does what he has to do. But if he doesn't have an excuse, and there's two arkan that go by this person, so it's like ruku' and up, and he has no excuse, then in this case, this person would not be excused. And also of the and like something else I'll mention, just because I don't think I'm not for sure if it'll come back. Oh, it will come back, inshallah. But the next thing is also, sometimes there's an opinion out there that a person that walks in front of another person, if a woman walks in front of a man while he's in salah, does this break the salah? And in general, it's sunnah for a person to put something that is in front of him while he's praying. This is sunnah, the sutra. Like this is sunnah, and someone should always do their best to do this, because this can create a hardship on other people if they don't do that, even if it's just with a hat. Like if you have a hat, you just put the hat down in front of you. This is better than nothing. And of course it's best to have something that's like 18 centimeters that is actually higher, and to put this on the side and whatnot. But even if it was just rolling up a carpet, the method we'll talk about, even just rolling a carpet over is enough to count as like some type of sutra. But if a woman does go in front of a man in this, the Shafi'i method is that it doesn't break the salah. And this is putting together the multiple hadiths of what Aisha, she says, because she used to pray, or like the Prophet ﷺ used to pray, and she was in front of him. And he would pray while she was in front of him, and she would move her legs while he would make sujood, and then she would move it back. And so this was her understanding of that, was that the woman in front of a man doesn't break the salah, moving in front of the man. And Allah knows best. But the Shafi'i madhab is that, and also the madhab of Aisha, is that it doesn't break. And the same thing for like a donkey or a black dog, this also wouldn't break the person's salah. And of course, if he has the sutra, then he's not falling into the prohibition in general of that. And Wallahu ta'ala alam. And so the next thing that he's going to go into is he's going to basically give the number of each of how much is in a day, basically. So he's going to go over. I'll just read through it quickly for this next section. He says, "Faslun wa rak'atul fara'id 17 rak'atan." So he says that there's 17 rak'ah for all of the fara'id in one day. فيها 34 سجدة, so 34 sujood, و94 takbira, and this is if you were doing all of the takbir, then it would be 40 or 94, and then also تسعة وتشهدات, and this is like nine of tashahhud, and 10 taslimat, and then of course this is you have 5 salat, and so times 2. And there's your taslimat for saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah at the end of it. And وَمِئَةٌ وَثَلَاثٌ وَخَمْسُونَ تَسْبِيحًا. And then also this 153 and tasbihah, if you're doing the tasbih during the salah. And so, and then he says here, وَجُمْلَةُ الْأَرْكَانِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ 126 رُكْنًا. And then so he says the amount of arkan in all of these salah would be 126 arkan. And he says في الصبح 30 ركنة, وفي المغرب 42 ركنة, وفي الرباعية 54 ركنة. And so he gives the numbers of how many rukn are in each one of the salawat. And this is pretty much self-explanatory. And so then the next thing he says is وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْقِيَامِ فِي الْفَرِيضَةِ صَلَّى جَالِسًا. And so he says whoever is not able to stand in the faridah, and of course this is in the faridah, he prays while he's sitting. And so this is in general with we mentioned as the arkan is standing for the one who's able, amal qudra. And so like the standing for the one who's able, this is of the things that is a rukn. But if he's not able, then he can do it sitting, as he says here. And وَمَنْ عَجَزَ عَنِ الْجُلُوسِ صَلَّى مُضْطَجِعًا. And so, and then if he can't sit, then then he lays down with tajia, which he lays down on his side, and his side that he lays down would be facing the qibla. So he wouldn't lay down with like his feet towards the qibla, unless he can't lay down on his side. If he can lay down on his side, then he lays down on his side where his body's facing the qibla. And that's how he would pray at that point. Or if he's like sitting in bed, that's another thing. He would take the same ruling as sitting, where he's facing the qibla with his chest and torso. And so, as far as like if you're not in the farida, it's permissible for you to sit while you're praying, and also to lay down while you're praying. There's no problem with that while you're in a sunnah prayer without a disability or anything. And for the person that does have a disability, he gets the reward of the person that does as if he didn't have the disability. So if a person would normally he would stand up at night and he would pray with like maybe he prays with like half a juz and a rak'ah or something of that sort. If he was going to do this and he can't stand up for all of it, so he prays what he can standing. He sits down for the rest, and this is better, of course, much better than him leaving that. Of course, like saying, oh, I can't stand up for all of that, so I'm only going to read a little bit. No, if you can read all of that and you want to read all of that, then you go ahead and sit down, and this is much better for you to sit. And if there's a problem that causes you to sit, then you get the reward of the person who's standing. If there's not a problem that causes you to sit, but you're just lazy or you want to just like chill out a bit, then you get half the reward. And for the person who's laying, he gets half of that half reward, which is like a quarter. And that comes in a hadith. But of course, if the person does have an excuse, like such as they're not able, they get the reward of the stander. Like the person who's standing, they get that reward, that full reward. And so this is of the things that, of course, if somebody is in the habit of reciting at night, then if they can, even if some people maybe the only way they can get in the habit is by sitting down. Like maybe they start off, they pray the Fatiha standing, and then they want to get in the habit, so they just sit while they're reciting the other part, and then they stand up at the end. This is something that's much, much better than leaving it altogether, because they think it's hard. And I've heard like stories of a sheikh that he basically wanted to get into Qiyam al-Layl, and there was no way he could do it except by getting a comfy chair and starting off that way. Starting the julus al-Layl. Like he would pray, and then he would just sit in the comfy chair. He would read what he wanted to read, and then he would get into the habit of doing that, and then he could, later on, he got to where he was able to stand much longer. And the Prophet ﷺ, at the beginning, he would stand until his feet would get like swollen from the amount of standing in the night prayer. But then in his older age, and then he would sit down for a lot of the longest part of his recitation, and then he would stand up towards the end, and then he would finish it off as normal. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, that's a great example for us. And if we can follow in that. And of course, if we do have hardship in like the night prayer or something of that sort, know that you can always sit down and take it. You can take it easy, and of course, that time is of the best times to pray. And so this is in regards to the person who's unable. And of course, whoever's able to stand up in the Faridah, if he's able to stand up for the amount of Fatiha, he needs to stand up for it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If he's able to stand up for like the 30 seconds it takes for him to recite Fatiha, and then he needs to stand up for that. And if he wants to recite afterwards and sit down, there's no problem with that. Or if he's able to recite half of the Fatiha and then he needs to sit down, okay. But occasionally you'll see people that'll give the adhan, and that adhan is much longer than the Fatiha, but when it comes to salah, they're just plopped. They're sitting the whole time. And of course, if you're able to stand, you got to stand for that part. And then, of course, whatever else is that, al-maysur la yasqutu bil-ma'sur. So, like, the thing that's easy to do doesn't go away with you not being able to do all of it. You still got to do what you can do. And so this is important for those people to understand. And also the next thing he'll go into what happens if you make a mistake in your salah. And this is also a very important chapter. Are there any questions about what we last went over? This last one? All right. And so it says here, فَصْلٌ وَالْمَتْرُوكُ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء. And so the matruk, it means like something that was left out of the salah, or that's left. There's three types of it, and he breaks it down into three. And this is very important to understand the Shafi'i madhab when it comes to the parts of the salah, are these: fard, wa sunnatun, wa hay'atun. So these are the three. You either have it's fard, or it's sunnah, or it's hay'ah. And also the fard sometimes is called rukn. Fard, rukn, these are interchangeable. And sunnah is also called ba'd. Like you have ba'd and ba'du shay. is like some of something, or like it's an essential part, or ab'ad is like the plural of it. And so this is also like the sunnah. So you have the fard, you also have the sunnah, and you also have hay'ah. And the hay'ah is like the mustahabbat. It's something that beautifies the prayer, but it's not like an essential part of it. And so he'll give a definition here of what is to be done with each of these. He says, فَالْفَرْضُ لَا يَنُوبُ عَنْهُ سُجُودُ السَّهْوِ بَلْ إِذَا ذَكَرَهُ وَالزَّمَانُ قَرِيبٌ أَتَى بِهَا or bihi وَبَنَى عَلَيْهِ وَسَجِدَ لِلسَّهْوِ. And so here he says, and as for the fard, it's something that the sujood sahw doesn't make up for it. So if this person left out a ruku', they got to go back to ruku'. Like they have to, he says here, bel, like I'm pointing to what to do if it's left out. And ذَكَرَهُ وَالزَّمَانُ قَرِيبٌ أَتَى بِهِ. So if he remembers and the time is close, like he hasn't gone far away from it, he's still in the same rak'ah. For instance, he's still in the same rak'ah and he forgot it, he goes straight back to it. All right. So if he went to sujood and he forgot, oh, I'm in sujood, but I forgot to make ruku', he stands up and he goes into ruku'. And then he says here, and then this is he comes with that, and everything between that is gone. I think we mentioned this before. And he says وَبَنَى عَلَيْهِ, and he starts from there and he builds from that. And he says وَسَجْدَ لِسَهْوِ, and because of that extra movement and whatnot that is a mistake, he makes the sujood sahw. And so this is the one way that it's dealt with. And of course, like the evidence for this is the famous hadith of Dhul Yadayn. And so like Dhul Yadayn, he basically asked the Prophet ﷺ and if the salah was shortened or if he forgot. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ, after he realized that he had shortened the salah from 4 rakahs to 2, and he realized he had done that by accident, then he just finished it off and made sujood sahw right from that point. And so, of course, he picked up right where he left off. So he had left off with two rakahs, so he picked right up where he left off and kept going. And so then here, the next one, which is the sunnah or the ba'd, as I mentioned, you have, he says here, وَالسُنَّةُ لَا يَعُودُ إِلَيْهَا بَعْدَ التَّلَبُّسِ بِالْفَرْضِ لَكِنَّهُ يَسْجُدُ لِلسَّهْوِ عَنْهَا. And so he says the sunnah, which is like we'll say it's the tashahhud, and also the qunut for the 2 times that he mentioned before, which are for Fajr, the end, the Fajr, and also for the last half of Ramadan. So if someone misses one of these, then he would make the sujood sahw for it, which is like the first tashahhud is the one that we'd see the most. He says you don't go back to it. لا يعود إليها بعد التلبس بالفرض. So if you've already started something that is fard, after it, you don't go back. There's no going back. You started with the fard, khalas. Like you forgot or you missed it, all right. You don't go back. And so if somebody, when does that fard happen? It's when they're considered standing. So if in tashahhud in general, this is where it would happen. Someone is sitting, they come straight up after they made their sujood, and they come straight up. They're almost standing, but their knees are bent. Are they standing or not? If they're closer to standing than they are to sitting, then khalas, they're standing and they missed it. If they're close, if they remember and they're almost there, they didn't quite go halfway, then they go back down and sit. And there's no problem with that. But if they passed to where they're now considered standing, then they leave it and they can't go back. It's haram. Haram for them to go back down and sit down. Because this is something that is sunnah, which is you don't go back to it. And the Prophet ﷺ, when this happened to him, he just kept going. He didn't go back to it, but rather he kept going when he missed the first tashahhud. And at the end, he made the sujood sahw, the sajdatain. And so, and this is, and no one goes back to it afterwards. Of course, if you're following an imam, in this case, I saw someone today, after the second rak'ah, I think there's 2 guys stood right up after salah. But then the imam is sitting, so they sat back down. This is right, and it's obligatory for them. Because they're following the imam, they must follow the imam. If they go against the imam, they got to keep following the imam. They're following. But if they were by themselves, they would keep standing. All right? And so this is, and once he starts with the fard, he doesn't go back. And the same thing with he'll say here, وَالْهَيْئَةِ and لَا يَعُودُ إِلَيْهَا بَعْدَ تَرْكِهَا. So the hay'ah, which is like the mustahabbat, which is like the sunnah, or like the dua al-istiftah, or tawajjuh as he called it here. And so if you missed one of these, or you missed isti'adha, and you started off with the Fatiha, this is something that's hay'ah, and you started up with the Fatiha, which is a rukun, you wouldn't go back. You wouldn't leave it. Once you missed it, all right, it's gone. You'll get it in the next time, inshallah. But you never, because you can't change the order. Once you started with the rukun, you can't go back to the other one. And he also says here, so once you leave it, you don't go back to it. And also he says, وَلَا يَسْجُدُ لِسَهْوِ عَنْهَا. And so there's no sujood sahu for if you left it, there's nothing you do afterwards. Like there's no sujood sahu. And then he says here, وَإِذَا شَكَّ فِي عَدَدِ مَا أَتَى بِهِ مِنَ الرَّكَعَاتِ بَنَى عَلَى الْيَقِينِ وَهُوَ الْأَقَلُ وَسَجَدَ لِسَهُ. So he says if the person is shak, and here this shak is not the 50-50 as we mentioned in usul. This shak is it can be like dhan as well. Like if he's unsure, any type of unsurety. It's not a 50-50 like we talked about before, but rather no, this is any type of unsurety about how much he prayed. Then he doesn't know how many rak'ats, or maybe he doesn't know how many times did I make sujood. He's unsure. Then he says bana ala yaqeen. So he builds off of what he's sure of. I know this is 3 rakat. For sure, this has got to be 3. I know I prayed, I prayed at least 3. This has got to be the third one. So he builds off of that. And he says here, he builds off the yaqeen, wa huwa al-aqal. So it's a thing that is less. So if he's wondering, right now he's unsure about the extra, but he's sure that there is 3. He's unsure, is this 4 or not? But he's sure that it's 3. So he builds off of the surety, which is 3. Or he's unsure, did I make 2 sajda, or did I make only 1? He builds off of he knows for sure he just got out of sajda. So he goes, he does the extra one. And then after that, wasajada li sahw. So then he makes a sujood because he because he lost his awareness of what number he was at. Maybe he added, maybe he didn't. And even if say like I was uncertain, I thought, is this 3 or 4? And so I stood up unsure. I stood up for what I believe is going to be the 4th one. I don't know. But just standing up into that next rak'ah is a means for me to make sujood sahu. Because I started this rak'ah without surety. So even if afterwards I remember, oh yeah, this is actually the 4th one, I'm sure now. I still make the sujood sahu because when I stood up and started this next rak'ah, I was wishy-washy. I wasn't completely solid about that. So I still make the sujood sahu. And he also says here, which is key, was sujood sahwi sunnah. So he says here, sujood sahwi is not something that's obligatory. It's sunnah. And of course, it's sunnah for someone to do. And the reason for this is because it's not given for something that is left that is obligatory. Of course, this is the sujood sahwi is to make up for another sunnah, and also or for a mistake, but that mistake you came with it. You came with the correct amount of rakats. So if someone say they got up, they made a mistake and they stood up after the tashahhud, and they didn't make the tashahhud. They missed it. Okay, and then they finished off their prayer, and at the end of the prayer they forgot to make sujood sahwi. They walk away. Oh, I missed sujood sahwi. What did they do? Their prayer is finished. If they're still there though, then they can make the sujood sahwi, or they're still in the same makan, like they're still in the same general place, and they haven't gone away or done a bunch of other things, they can still make the sujood sahwi afterwards. And he says here, وَمَحَلُّهُ, like the place for it, قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ. It's before the person gives the salam. And this is the easiest of the madhabs, is as far as like some of the madhabs, they'll give like, if you added something, then you do it afterwards. If you started something, or if you missed something, then you do it before. Or like they have like a whole bunch of like scenarios of this, that, and the other, because it's narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that he did it before and after. But the Shafi'is, they took that it's before in all of the cases, and if you want to do it afterwards, that's okay, fine. And afterwards you can do it as well after the salam, and you'd still be making a salam at the end of it. But in general, it's very easy. You would always make the salam before, or you'd make the sujood sahwi before you make the salam, because this would be there. And also, say someone they made salam and then they realize, oh yeah, I forgot the sujood sahwi. They can just start off from there, and when they make the sujood sahwi, they're in salah. So if they broke wudu before going into sujood sahwi, haram on them, like they can't go and do sujood sahwi. They broke their wudu after they said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. They broke their wudu, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I forgot sujood sahwi. Khalas. Like if you go back into that, then you're going into salah where your wudu is no good, and so you're breaking your salah. So of course, like this is the one time when it'd be haram to go back in the sujood sahu, but in general, this is the time that it would be done, and this is something that is sunnah. Are there any questions about this? And of course, this can be a place where scenarios come up. No questions? Okay. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about the times of prayer. As we talked about the times of prayer for when the obligatory prayers are. Now we're going to talk about the times of prayer when we're prohibited to pray in general. And so he's going to talk about these times. There's 5 of them, and we'll talk about them. And there's a basic principle that in these times of salah, these are in general for us not to pray in them. And we talked about in usul that there will never be 2 commands that go against each other. So if we have a command when we come into the masjid to pray before we sit down, even if this is at the time of nahi, we have a specific order for this, so we're allowed to do this. And so when we have a specific reason for something that comes before the salah, we can always pray that salah, such as even wudu. So if I made wudu and I do the sunnah of after making wudu like Bilal, then I can pray the sunnah of wudu afterwards, even though I'm in that time of that prohibition, as Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu anhu used to make wudu, and then he would pray afterwards. And so here he says, وَخَمْسَةُ أَوْقَاتٍ لَا تُصَلَّى فِيهَا إِلَّا صَلَاةٌ لَهَا سَبَبٌ. And this is sababun mutaqaddim. And so it has a reason that comes before it. As opposed to sabab mutaakhir, which is a sabab that comes afterwards, such as istikhara. So we have a reason for istikhara, but that sabab, or like that istikhara part, comes at the end of the prayer. So this needs to have a sabab, or like a reason for it, that comes beforehand. And so he says here, بعد صلاة الصبح حتى تطلع الشمس. And so if you wanted to add to it, so this is after praying the Fajr prayer until the sun rises. And then he says, وعند طلوعها حتى تتكامل وترتفع قدر رمح. And so he says here, and then when the sun is rising until تتكامل, which means like it completes the rising, وترتفع, and like rises to the point qadra rumh, like the height of a rumh, which is like a spear length. And this is right around 15 minutes or 13 minutes, like so about 13 minutes after sunrise. They call it shuruq. After the sunrise, you have about 13 minutes, and then after 13 minutes, you're allowed to pray. So if you wanted to pray duha, you can wait until 13 minutes, and then you can pray after that. And this is taqriban 13 minutes. Sometimes people will say 15 minutes and whatnot. And this is the qadr rumh, is like if you were to have a spear on the horizon, how long would this be? Like how much had the sun come up? But it's basically to make the differentiation between like the sun worshippers and the Muslims. As the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions of this time that this is the time when the sun rises and sets between the horns of shaitan. And so like shaitan, he goes at the place where that is, because of course there's like the people that worship shaitan are the people that obey him. So the people that worship the sun are ultimately worshiping shaitan, because he's the one who told them to do that. So this is of the time that we're prohibited to do this, and also of the wisdoms behind this is the tashabbuh bil kuffar. And this is something that is like likening ourselves to the kuffar in that way. So this is something that the shariah went to great extents to make sure that we weren't going at these times that the kuffar make out as a big time for them to worship the sun. So this is of that, and this he'll talk about that. This is for Asr as well, when the sun is setting at the time of that. But we wait until it's about 13 minutes after that, and then it's time. Then from that time, the duha prayer, it starts from there and goes to this next time he'll say here. وَإِذَا اسْتَوَتْ حَتَّى تَزُولَ. So when إِذَا اسْتَوَتْ, which means it comes to the highest place in the sky, the sun, once it comes to the highest point, which is like that solar noon, until the zawal, which is the beginning of that shadow. As I mentioned before at the times, the beginning of that shadow, when the time of dhuhr starts, then this is where you're allowed to pray. So at that one point, this is also another prohibited time. And this comes in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says that Jahannam breathes out or exhales at this time. So it's a time not to pray in. And also he says وَبَعْدَ صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ حَتَّى تَغْرُبَ الشَّمْسُ. And also after Salat, after Asr until the sun sets. And also he says here وَعِنْدَ الْغُرُوبِ حَتَّى يَتَكَامَلَ غُرُوبُهَا. And also when the sun sets until it finishes setting. And so if you were to put the first two, so if you have like the after you pray the Salat al-Subh or Fajr until the sun rose the height of a spear, then this is like one time. And then you have the solar noon, this is another time. And then you have the time from after you've prayed Asr until the sun has finished setting. And this is like 3. So you have 3 times. He says 5 because he broke these into 2. And so this is, in general, these are those times that we're not to pray into unless there's a reason to do it beforehand. Such as like if we come into Salah, we've made wudu and whatnot, or if we have a Salah that we need to make up. So say someone woke up for Fajr and they missed Fajr, but they're in that time and the sun is rising. They pray right then. Pray right then and there. There's no problem with the sun being rising and they missed that, okay? But they pray right now. There's no negation because they have a reason for that. The Salah is there. And the same thing if someone's after Asr and they missed the Sunnah for Dhuhr, then they can pray the Sunnah for Dhuhr at the time of after they prayed Asr. If they weren't able to do that, they can make up that prayer at that time. There's no problem with that. Because the sabab, or the reason, it came beforehand. It already happened. And so the next chapter we'll go into is we're going to talk about the Salah in congregation, Salatul Jama'ah. Any questions on this last chapter?
وإذا استوت حتى تزول.
Istawat, it means comes to the highest point. Comes like the solar noon. Until hatta tazula is when it starts to go away. So istawat is like the very tip of the solar noon. There's no, like if we were to have the stick up and we're looking at the shadow is like gone. Or like the smallest point of its shadow. Then once the shadow starts to come back, okay, then we're allowed to do it. Alright? And so he says here, Fasl, وَصَلَاةُ الْجَمَاعَةِ سُنَّةٌ مُؤَكَّدَةٌ. And so here he says that salat in congregation, in jama'ah, which means that with at least one other person, is something that's sunnah mu'akkada. And of course, like in the masjid is even better. And he says sunnah mu'akkad because there's evidences that show like the Prophet ﷺ, when he talks about the munafiqeen, that he wishes he would one day go out, call the people to salah, have someone lead the people in salah, and then we go and burn down the houses of the munafiqeen that don't come to the salah and pray in the congregation. So of course this is a very harsh hadith, like when it comes to this, and this is of the evidence that is used to show that Salatul Jama'ah is something that's obligatory in every individual. A lot of times this will be the one that's used. And of course there's a couple answers to it. One is that this is specifically for munafiqeen, and also the Prophet ﷺ never did it and never called for someone to do it, or like to do this. This was kind of like a warning and whatnot. And also there's the other hadith that Salatul Jama'ah tafdalu Salatul Fadh bi 27 daraja, and like that the salat in Jama'ah, which is like in the masjid, but also with like other individuals, like the smaller meaning of that, is better. And tafdalu Salatul Fadh bi 27 daraja. So if it's better, then we see that there's good in the first one. And normally if you see afdal, when we say that something is afdal than something else, this is better than something else, that means that other thing is acceptable. And so this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, is that Salatul Jama'ah is something that's sunnatun mu'akkadatun ala al-ayn. Like when it comes to the individuals, this is something that's sunnah mu'akkada. When it comes to the other, there's another view in the Shafi'i madhab, which doesn't go against this view, but it's that the Salatul Jama'ah is fardu kifaya. And this is the one that gets the most weight, and it's something that should be done. And of course, I don't know if we talked about kifaya yet, but fardu kifaya, the difference between fardu kifaya and fardu ayn. Fardu ayn is this action is called to be done by the individual. Like this action needs to be done, and it can't just be the actions that is done. It needs to be done by this individual. So both the action and the individual are called to play. And fardu kifaya, this is the action needs to be done. The action needs to be done. But it's not necessarily looking at individuals. This is just looking at the action needs to get done. However it gets done, whoever does it, the action needs to get done on the community. And whoever, if somebody doesn't do it in the community, as long as somebody else did it, then the action is done and there's no sin on the community. And of course, everyone is held accountable to what they're able to do. And so if someone's not able to do that, then and they're not held accountable. And of course, this is for the men, that it's fard al-kifaya ala al-muqimina min al-rijal, of the people that are the muqim, which is like the residents that are men. And so this is, and also of the other evidences that the Prophet ﷺ, when he would go out to war, to war before he would go into a village, he would usually go in the morning, like at Sabah, but he would wait and see if they prayed Fajr. So he would listen, did he hear an adhan or not? So if he heard the adhan, he'd know that they prayed, and so we see that there's a jama'ah going on. And if there wasn't, then he would go and he would basically attack that village in the morning and whatnot. And so he would wait for this. So of course, like the fact that it needs to be done with the community, this is something that they would be fought if they didn't do that. Wallahu ta'ala. And so here he says that it's sunnah mu'akkana, and this is for the individuals. And then, and as I mentioned there, as regards to the community needs to come up with that, and it's fard on the community, or kifaya. And he says, وَعَلَى الْمَأْمُومِ أَنْ يَنْوِيَ الْإِتِمَامَ. So he says, and for the person who's being followed, or the person that's following, al-ma'mum is the person who's following the imam. Ma'mum is the one that's being led. Right? And the imam is the one who's leading. And he says, dun al-imam, which means, but not the imam. So he says, al al-ma'mum, this is of the forms of saying it. He has to do this. And the person who's following, he needs to, an yanwiya, he needs to have that niyyah, that he is following the imam, al-ittimam, which is the act of following. Alright? And so the person, if he's going to follow the imam, he needs to have the intention that he's following the imam. If he just goes without the intention of following the imam, and he starts doing the same actions as him and following his actions without the intention, without coming in with the intention of following the imam, then it's something that breaks his salah. Like he needs to intend that he's following the imam. And the imam himself, does he need to intend for his salah to be valid? No, he says dun al-imam, except the imam. The imam doesn't need to intend that. But of course, if he wants to get the reward for it, he needs to intend. He needs to intend that he's leading. So if you're praying by yourself and someone taps you on the shoulder and want to pray with you and whatnot, if you don't intend to lead them, their salah is still valid. But your salah, you won't get the reward for leading and being in jama'ah unless you intend. So you need to intend from that point, and you can intend from that point and go on. And so, and there's a couple other conditions here. And the imam is someone who's in front. So in general, like the imam should always be in front of the person that he's leading. And if the person who's leading goes in front of him, then it breaks the salah for the person who's being led. Like if it's the person who's being led, his the back of his heels go in front of the back of the heels of the imam. They go in front. No, maybe his feet are smaller than the imam. We go off of the heels, like the back of the heels. This is the thing that can't be in front of the imam. It needs to always be behind the imam, because the imam is the one who's in front. And so if it's at the same level as the imam, the back of the heels, okay, this is fine. It's best for you to be a little bit back, is what the Shafi'is will say. It's best for you to be a little bit back because he's the imam. Like he's supposed to be in front, imam. And so, but if he's at the same level, okay. But if he ever goes in front, then he broke the conditions of him being led, is that he doesn't go in front of the imam. And so he says here, he's going to go into some of the other who can lead who. And he says here, وَيَجُوزُ أَنْ يَتَّمَّ الْحُرُّ بِالْعَبْدِ. And يَتَّمَّ means to be led. So he says, وَيَجُوزُ for a hur, like someone who is free, to be led by bil-abdi, by a person who's a slave. So a slave can lead the free person. And he also says here, وَالْبَالِغُ and bil-murahiq. And so like someone who is balig, like that he's held accountable by someone who has not reached that level yet. Like he's still a kid. As long as the kid is mumayyiz. Like the kid needs to be mumayyiz, he needs to be He needs to be knowledgeable about wudu in general and how to pray in general. The kid needs to be knowledgeable. But it's okay. And he says murahiq, which is like someone who is close to bulugh. But even if the kid is smaller, but he knows how to pray, he knows wudu, he knows the arkan of prayer, and he knows basically how to pray well, then okay, this is fine for someone to be led. If he's a kid that, of course, he's not mumayyiz yet, then this is another no. This would not be permissible. And he says, وَلَا تَصِحُّ الْقُدْوَةُ الرَّجُلٍ بِامْرَأَةٍ. So he says here, it's not permissible and la yasih. As we talked about sahih and batil, and this is something that is not, it doesn't even get, it doesn't go through. As we would say in la tasih al-qudwa, and qudwa is like the leading that a man would be led by a woman. So like this person being led by a woman, like a man being led by a woman, it's not permissible one, and it's also not, it doesn't happen, like it doesn't go through. This prayer would be batila for this person. So of course the man will always lead other men or women as well, but a woman will never lead a man. And so this is the general principle, and this is, in general, there's like next to no, I say next to no, like difference of opinion here. But of course there's some liberalist people that came out and said that, oh, it's okay, maybe there's a strange opinion out there that someone says, and even that strange opinion is like it's so far out there. Like occasionally there'll be people that open up the books and they just go looking for that strange opinion that's out there. And of course you would never follow all of the strange opinions that are out there, but this one you like it, so it's very, very strange. But of course this one also we have there's hadith as well as in regards to this matter, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man zara qawman fala ya'ummuhum wal ya'ummuhum rajulun minhum." So he says, if someone visits people, then he shouldn't be the one who leads them. And this is like adab, like the person, if they ever go into another, and they're a visitor, they're not the one who leads the people. Like the people should always have someone from them that lead them. Same thing, a person that's in their house, the person whose house it is should be the one that leads. Like this is the normal adab. And then he says, وَلْيَأُمَّهُمْ رَجُلٌ مِّنْهُمْ. So that there should be a man from them that leads them. He says, a rajul. And this is a man. And also just the jumhur ulama, they're all about, like even to the point where you'll have some people that claim ijma' on this issue, that a man is never to be led by a woman or by someone who is mixed, And so, and he also says here, a mix, someone that has both, like intersex.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a whole. You'll find in the next, like if you look in the next level, they'll always talk about the khunta.
Okay.
And the khunta is the intersex, person that has both private parts. Yeah. And so, of course, a man should never be led by someone who's khunta, because this person is questionable. Maybe it's a woman. And so a khunta can lead women, but a khunta should never lead men. Yeah. And they have their own things. And in general, this person is dealt with. They go to the doctor that is trustworthy, of course, and see which of the parts are like like that this person is actually this. He's one of these, and he gets rid of the other thing. Yeah. And this is in general. And so, of course, there's actually there's actually a book about ahkam al-khunta and whatnot, al-khunta al-mushkil, for someone who has like that's in between. Of course, this is a whole thing. I was amazed when I came into Islam, and I had studied about intersex before, and then I was like, what does Islam have to say about it? And it's like, they have books about this. Okay, khalas. There's nothing in Islam that has been left untouched. Even the subject of like someone who's intersex, what is their fiqh rulings? It's all been talked about. And so, so a man is only led by other men, and a woman is only she can be only led by other women, or she can't lead anyone other than women. I'll say it that way. Yeah. So a woman can only lead other women. وَلَا قَارِئ بِأُمِّي. And so also like a person who is qari', and this means someone who can read the Fatiha properly. So the person who can read, this is what qari' in fiqh, it means someone who can read the Fatiha properly. The person who can read the Fatiha should never be led by someone who can't read the Fatiha. This person doesn't know Zay from Dal, then he should not be leading people. Like this person, he needs to, if he's going to read properly, or like if he's going to lead people, he needs to read with that alladina, sirat alladina. He can't say alazina. Like in the Shafi'i madhab, this person who says sirat alazina, this is here. Yes, it is a problem here. The Shafi'i madhab is the person who says sirat alazina and amta alayhim. This person cannot lead people that can say it properly. If they're all the same level, they all say al-lazina, and then they're missing something in their prayer, but like that's something they need to go learn, you know.
Could you just leave the salah?
You pray by yourself. Yeah. Because, and the issue is if they've made like a mistake in i'rab, like I heard one person said غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبَ عَلَيْهِمْ. He said مَغْضُوبَ with fath. And of course this doesn't make sense, like i'rab wise, but it doesn't change the meaning. Okay, and I looked into it. This doesn't change the meaning, so it's okay. But if you change a letter with another letter, this is the part that Shafi'i madhab is very clear about. This breaks the salah. You can't change a letter for another letter. If you're weak at, if you're like can't say the letter very well, but you're somewhere close, all right, that's fine. But if you're changing it with another letter, a zai is not a dhal. So and people need to know that, of course. And this is the Shafi'i madhab in here, and when it comes to like al-lazina, and this is the problem that's a lot of times in Misr in particular, and sometimes people will say wala dhalin, and they'll say wala dhalin. They won't say dhalin with bod, they'll say dhal, and this is incorrect as well, because this dha is a different letter, and this is something that would break the salah. Of course, if it's something that's subtle, this is not this is not a huge deal. But of course, if you ever know that if you're in a group of people, you know how to recite the Fatiha, and they're all looking for someone to lead, maybe it's best for you to go lead. You know, like if there's not an imam there that's ready, because I've been in a situation where I was just shy to do it, and then I get a person who says al-lazina, Allah musta'an. Because so you kind of know if there's nobody there and you can read properly, then go lead them. If you're learning, your students of knowledge, you should lead the people if they don't know, or if they're wondering about it, maybe they don't want to be put on the spot. You know, when there's no actual imam that's there, sometimes it's best for a student of knowledge just to go lead them and put everyone at ease. Yeah, but in general, someone who can read, they should never be led by someone who can't read properly. And this is regards to the Fatiha in particular. Of course, the rest of the person who is the best person to lead, and he's not going to mention it here, but the best person to lead is the person who's the most knowledgeable. Afqahu. So like the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيَأُمَّهُمْ أَقْرَأَهُمْ. And aqra, it was understood by the Shafi'i to mean most knowledgeable, not the person who has the most hifz. Not أحفظهم, but he's like أقرأهم, which means the most knowledgeable of them, with the Quran and then with the Sunnah. And so like the person who's the most knowledgeable, he's the person that normally would be the best to lead. And then after that you can look at some of the other things, such as the person who has the most Islam, or like that's been in Islam longer than the other people and whatnot. And normally the person who's been in Islam or has who is older in age, then he would be the person who is put above other people. But of course, like the most knowledgeable person, then the most like the hafiz. Like if you have a hafiz that is knowledgeable, great, this is great. And knowledge here is referring specifically to fiqh salah. Like and like if this person, maybe he's knowledgeable in a lot of other things, but like when it comes to salah, he's not necessarily a master in it. Then this is something that, of course, the person who knows salah very well, he's the faqih. And of course, it's ينبغي لكل imam. Like it's important that every single imam, if they're like imam of a masjid, a lot of times it's important that they at least take a special care to learn salah. And maybe they don't learn everything in the world. Okay, they're imam and they have a nice voice and they're gonna recite well and they've memorized, but they should learn the fiqh of salah well, you know, so that they know what to do when certain things happen. And so this is for the person, yeah. And in general, if someone's like a new Muslim and whatnot, they should always try to find somebody to lead them. You know, if they can find someone to lead them, this is better than them leading someone who is knowledgeable. Yeah. And so he says, "Wa ayyu mawdin So he's going to talk about the places where you pray in regards to the imam, and this is specifically in the masjid he'll talk about first. He says, وَأَيُّ مَوْضِعٍ صَلَّى فِي الْمَسْجِدِ بِصَلَاةِ الْإِمَامِ فِيهِ وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ أَجْزَأْهُ مَا لَمْ يَتَقَدَّمْ عَلَيْهِ. So he says here, with a couple conditions. First, he's going to talk about any place inside of the masjid, where while he's in the masjid and the imam's in the masjid, as long as he knows he says وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ, means that he's aware of what's going on in the salah. He knows when the imam is going into ruku', or he sees somebody who sees the imam going into ruku', and so he knows where the salah is, then he can follow him anywhere he's at. Wants to go in the corner, back in the corner, okay. If he's in the same building, doesn't matter. If he's on the 10th floor and it's still masjid, and all the people are downstairs, he's still in the masjid, he prays with them, no problem. So this is in the masjid himself. So if he's in the masjid, anywhere in the masjid, he can pray, whether he's by himself or with the people. Of course, he should be with the people, but the salah would be sahih if he did that. Here's the other condition here. So one is that he's aware of the person, like he's aware of the salah, and the imam and where he's at in the salah, and then also that he doesn't go in front of him. He can't go in front of him. So he needs to make sure he's always behind him, wherever he's at in the salah, that he never goes in front. And sometimes you'll find this in some of the masajid. They know that people are outside, and they'll put a little sign, this is the line, don't go in front of it, because you're going to step in front of the imam. So this is helpful for those people. He'll talk about for the people outside in just a second here. But of course, we can't ever go in front of the imam. And so then he says here, the next thing for the person who's outside the masjid, he says, وَإِن صَلَّى فِي الْمَسْجِدِ وَالْمَأْمُومِ, he says, وَإِن صَلَّى, he's talking about the imam here, وَإِن صَلَّى الْإِمَامُ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ وَالْمَأْمُومُ خَارِجَ الْمَسْجِدِ قَرِيبًا مِنْهُ وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ وَلَا حَائِلَ هُنَاكَ جَازَ. So he says here, with a couple of conditions, that if the imam prays inside the masjid, alright, so the imam's praying inside the masjid, and the person who's being led, وَالْمَأْمُومُ, at the time when the person that's being led is outside, kharij al-masjid. He's outside of the masjid, qariban minhu. He's not like super far away from the masjid, but he's in a reasonable distance from the masjid. And وَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِصَلَاتِهِ, so he knows where they're at in the salah. Whether that's from like he can see the people inside the inside of the masjid, which normally he needs to see somebody who sees someone who sees. Like he needs to be connected with sight. Like normally he needs to see someone, like if someone's in the doorway, he can see that they're making ruku'. Alright, this is good. But if he can't see anything from anybody who sees them, this is a problem in the Shafi'i method. The person needs to see someone. From that, he says that he's open, so that he's alimun bi salatihi, so he knows where the people are in their salah and where the imam is in his salah. وَلَا حَائِلَ هُنَاكَ, and that there's no barrier. Ha'il, barrier. That there's no barrier between him and that, then jaz, then it's permissible for him to do this. And what he means by no barrier is if, say we have a masjid and they close the door, and that person can't walk, if they're walking, they can't walk to the imam if they wanted to. Like say this person wanted to walk to the imam, he needs to be able to walk to the imam, and that there's no like actual barrier. Of course, like if there's like security guards and whatnot, that's something else. But like an actual barrier where the door's closed and it's barred, and then you're from somewhere else, or you're inside your apartment out in front of your apartment, or is in front of the masjid. So you're praying inside your apartment, the door's closed, you got another door that goes outside. All of these, there's no following the imam in this case. You need to be in a place where there's nothing separating you from that, and also the door needs to be at least propped open. And so this is in general that for the people that are outside the masjid, and of course they should always see someone who sees someone. And yeah, you have a question?
So how about people go to the haram? There's so many people, they plan the hotel.
No, this is great. Yeah, as far as the praying in the hotel, this is something that no. According to the Shafi'i method, if they're praying when there's a door between them and the outside, this is a problem. Yeah. As far as there's another thing that happened in the haram that when I was there, you'd see some of the people down the street. As soon as the prayer comes out, because we have the loudspeakers on the street. You got the loudspeakers, you can hear what's going on in the haram. They'll come out on the street and they'll just put their things in front of the store. They'll put their masalla there and they'll just wait, and then they'll pray from there. and they're down the street. Like, they don't see people that see people. And I was like down because the street is curved. The street is curved, and from here, this person, I was walking, I was late for one of the salah, and it was like Asr. I was here, and I saw these people were praying, and they were being led by the speakers. But I was like, this person, he sees somebody, but does that person see buddy? So I walked, does this person see someone? Does that person that he sees, does that person see? And there was actually a curve where none of them saw anyone that was in the masjid. And so that break there, this is the problem. And like the Shafi'i madhab, the person, there's allowed to be that break and that gap between people, but those people never should be in a place where they can't see someone who sees someone. They need to see someone that has that link. So once I got to a point where I could see someone who was inside the masjid, khalas, I'm good. That's all I need. I just need to see someone that saw someone that's in the masjid, or even that. But I was walking, I was like, I don't think these people here are even, they're just praying, and maybe they're following a fatwa, inshallah, but like according to like the Shafi'i madhab, that doesn't work. They need to see someone who sees someone who's in the masjid. And this is important, and there can't be any barrier between them. So if they're inside their house and they're being led by that, there's a barrier between them. There's a door that's closed. Can they walk to the person? No. There's barriers. There's an elevator between them and them. So this wouldn't work. Being led by that, they would, and of course, if someone's in the haram, all of their prayers are anywhere in the haram, their prayers are multiplied. Of course, going to the masjid is extra, but anywhere in the haram, their prayers are multiplied to the 100,000 times, and that's specific for all of the haram, of Mecca. That's all of it, that it's multiplied, as opposed to in Medina, it's only for the masjid. Inside, and like for the masjid itself, that's the only one that gets the ruling of the multiplication. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Any questions about this last section here?
Well, I want to go back a little bit on the prayer. So when you pray with somebody, the distance should be, a little bit back. I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
So how about you praying with your wife? What's the distance? At home,
So in general, the distance that if someone is in a row from another row, and in general, if you have rows of people, then the rows should never be more than like 3 dhira. And dhira, which is like, there shouldn't be like a dhira is like this. So there shouldn't be 3 of these away from somebody. So it always should be like 3 dhira. Anything more than this, like a big gap, is something that should be closed in. And sometimes people they'll throw an extra row between the next gap, and it'll be more than 3 dhira, and like it's like wingspans, or half of a wingspan. But this is something in general we should never be super far away from each other. As far as when it comes to women and also children are praying in the house, and it's narrated in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, that he had that he lined up the boy behind him, and then the woman behind the boy, like with 3 different rows. So this would be like, there would be rows, and you can have the row, and like the distance is not super important. If you have a tight space, no problem. There's no problem with that. But there would be like a row. There'd be a row for the men, or for like the kids, and then a row for the women at the last. And of course, that's the women would always be at the back. Wallahu ta'ala. The next couple chapters he's going to go into he's going to go into talking about the musafir, when they can break their salah and when they can join it, and also for the qasr wal jama'. And then he's going to go into Jumu'ah, and he's going to talk about some of these other things. Inshallah, we'll lead this to the next class, and we will stop here for today, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.